Hi, Pam. How are you?
There we go. All right.
Pam.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I'm going to be a one and done term.
Why is that?
Well, with the redistricting, it might be, could be a possibility.
Well, are you going to run?
Well, we'll see. That would be a discussion between, me and the other supervisor who would be affected.
I guess.
I guess. Well, I knew that when I ran too. It just might be a 2-year thing, but and that's, I'm okay with that. It's been a privilege. Just that's what it ends up being. No big deal.
I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't plan on this. I was asked, and I said no for several months. But since I didn't start my doctorate because of this, I was going to start my doctorate.
Really?
Yes, I don't have.
What was your math? What's
I was muted.
Sean.
All right, am I on here?
Yep.
I think I know everybody, but for those of you who maybe don't know me, my name is Eric Damcott. I'm the data and GIS manager here at the county. I've been here over 20 years, so I've had the privilege of doing this both in 2001 and again in 2010 through your interim redistricting process in 2015. We also have two other GIS staffers here at the county, Mike Vandersanden, who has been here nearly as long as me and has been by my side through the creation of those plans. And then our new employee, new to us, but not new to redistricting, is Pat Walker. Although he doesn't have experience here, he comes with a wealth of redistricting experience from his previous employer, the city of West Allis. So what I'm here to do right now is I'm going to give you a subset of the presentation that we've been giving to the local clerks regarding the timeline. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that we use to create the three maps that are in your agenda packet and hanging on the wall here. I will describe briefly what stands out to me as a staff person about each of those maps, both the good and the bad. And then I will do my best to answer any questions that you have about the process as to why the maps looked the way that they do. So we're talking about redistricting, but it all starts with census data. The census block is the smallest unit of entity for which the Census Bureau collects and tabulates data. A census block is bounded on things that we can see on the ground, like roads and railroads and surface water, but they're also bounded by things we can't see on the ground, like municipal boundaries. It's these blocks that we group together to create wards and districts. When creating districts, we can't split those blocks. The only exception is where there's been recent annexations. This is an example of what a block map would look like. If you're familiar with the area, this is the northwest corner of the village of Germantown and parts of the town of Germantown. You can see the individual blocks there, bounded by roads, railroads, surface water, and the municipal boundaries. Behind each of those blocks, there's a table worth of data that tells us how many people are in that block, as well as the racial makeup. For 2020, Washington County is split into 2,605 blocks. They have a population that range from 0 to 649. 438 of those blocks have no population. Primarily, those are interior of lakes, maybe the right of way of a divided highway. Of the 2167 blocks that contain at least one person, the average of those blocks is 63. So as we begin to build districts, that's what we're using to put together to create the districts, and ultimately when the municipalities create their wards, that's what they'll be using as well. And there are many ways that blocks can be combined to create legal districts. The redistricting process is broken down into three phases. Phase one is where we are right now, and that's the creation of the county's tentative supervisory district plan. We are bound by the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and those districts need to be substantially equal in population. In the training that I've attended, they typically tell us that if our overall plan deviation is less than 10%, the courts have deemed that plan to be consistent with the Equal Protection Clause. Keep that in mind. We'll be talking about it again in a bit. There's also the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that protects the voting rights of racial minorities. These are the 2020 populations for the municipalities in Washington County. Our overall county population is 136,761. We split those into a 21 district plan, and we're looking at an average district size of 6,512 people. Looking at that another way, based on their population, the city of West Bend should have roughly 5 supervisors, a little less. Village of Germantown, 3 and a part. City of Hartford, 2 and a part. Village of Richfield, a little less than 2. Village of Jackson, just over 1. Every other municipality in Washington County has a population smaller than our target district size. Their population is going to have to be added with the population of another municipality to come up with that 6512 number. Looking at this another way, the plurality of residents of Washington County live in a village, 37%, followed by city, and town 28%. So we've been saying a third, and it's roughly, but not exactly. So ideally, we'd like to create representation on the board that matches this breakdown. However, it's not always that easy. So if we take a few examples. Now, these slides were created before the census numbers came out. So the districts that you're going to see are just hypotheticals. They don't match what you're going to see on the maps. And the reason why is because the populations have changed since then. But the village of Kewaskum has just over 4,300 people. To create a district, we're going to have to find 2,200 people from an adjacent town to create that district. If that district were created this way, we're going to end up with a supervisory district that's 66% village and 34% town. That's one option. Another option is you could take the village of Kewaskum, split it right down the middle. Now we have 2154 in each half of that village. Now we need to find 4358 from neighboring towns to make those two districts whole. If we do it that way, now we have 67% town and 33% village in each of those districts. Similar things happen over in the village of Newburg that has just over 1,000 people. We're going to need to add 5,400 people to that district from adjacent towns to reach the target district size. I can't add more village people to that district simply because there's no villages adjacent to the village of Newburg. I have to go out into a town to do that. So City of Hartford has over 15,000 people, and by its population, it's going to have 2 and a part supervisors. One logical choice is to create 2 districts that are 100% city. But in so doing, we now have 2,593, almost 2,600 people who also live in the city of Hartford who are not in one of those city districts. They're going to have to be added to a split district of some sort. One option would be to take about 4,000 people from the adjacent municipalities to create that district. Now, this split district would be 60% town and 40% city. Did I say that right? 60% town, 40% city. So that's stage 1. That's where we are tonight. That's the tentative plan that hopefully you guys can come to consensus on tonight. We can move forward with the county board. When we're done with that, we pass the baton to our municipalities where they're going to adopt their ward plans. Ward population sizes are dependent on the overall population of the municipality. So the town of Germantown, which has less than 300 people, they really don't have to create a ward if they don't want to. The city of West Bend, the city of Hartford, the village of Germantown, and the village of Richfield have between 10,000 and 3,900 people. So their wards are going to have to be between 600 and 2,100. Everybody else is going to fall in that middle category where they're going to have to create wards between 300 and 1,000 people. For West Bend, Hartford, and Germantown, their aldermanic and trustee districts are going to be subject to that substantially equal standard as well. So what does that mean? If we start with the town of Farmington and we create a hypothetical district that's that green line, and the city of Hartford, or the city, sorry, I'm messing up my municipalities already. The town of Farmington creates a ward plan that looks like this. That's going to come out as a conflict because Ward 3 can't be in both of those supervisory districts. Alternatively, if they would create their ward plan that looked like this and each of those 5 wards fell within the 300 to 1,000 people range, town of Farmington is good. So one step more complicated for those areas with elected alder and trustee districts. So this is a village of Germantown. And again, if we put in our supervisory districts and the village comes through and creates wards, each of those wards being between 600 and 2,100 people, those wards also need to work with their trustee districts that they want to put in place. So each one of those wards can only be in one supervisory district, and each one of those wards can only be in one trustee district. You need to have all 3 layers working with each other. Oh, but there's more. The village of Richfield. This is an old map, and I realize that some of these school districts have consolidated. But if they have 4 school districts and you overlay 4 supervisory districts, and they don't line up, we have a minimum of 13 ballot styles that we just created for the town clerk to have to worry about. There's expense in those ballot styles, and it's also, I believe, creates confusion at the polls. And I will defer to the county clerk on more about that. So that's what the local governments are going to do when we complete our tentative plan. When they adopt all their wards, then we move to redistricting stage 3. And that's the reconciliation of supervisory districts for the municipal wards were areas where we were unable to make them exactly line up. We reconcile all those differences and you adopt your final plan, and the municipalities adopt their alderperson and trustee plans. All right, when do we do this? Normally, the apportion numbers would have been to the president's desk at the end of last year. We would have received redistricting data by the end of March. We would have had 60 days to adopt the tentative plan. The municipalities would have had 60 days to adopt their wards, and we would have had 60 days to do that reconciliation process. All gearing up to December 1st, when you will begin circulating your nomination papers for re-election. All right, what are we doing this year? The census data was not released until August 12th. That date doesn't change. You're still circulating your papers on December 1st. So we are condensing what normally takes 180 days into a very tight timeline. All right, so how are we going to get from August 12th to to November 23rd? I put November 23rd up there because that's the date that all of the local clerks and the county clerk has to publish their type A legal notice for the upcoming election. That's what it needs to be in the paper. Some of the, depending on the timelines that the newspapers send out, it's possible that they will have to get it to the newspaper even before then. So that condenses our timeline even more. I can't say enough good things about the Legislative Technology Services Bureau. They turned around the census data. I think they received it on a Thursday, and by Monday morning, they opened it up for redistricting. They did a fantastic job. They're a great partner in the process. We are hoping that between August 16th and August 24th, the County Executive Committee will prepare and recommend a tentative supervisory district plan. Between August 25th and October 15th, that will be when the municipalities create their wards. We are encouraging the municipalities to start as soon as you take action, but they need to recognize that if the plan changes as a result of the public hearing that needs to be held, or at the county board, that they may need to rework their wards. And that public hearing is tentatively scheduled for your September 8th meeting, and that requires a Class 3 notice, which is 3 insertions into the paper. So there's built-in time into the schedule because of that statutory publication requirement. Sometime after the board adopts its tentative plan, and before October 15th, we are asking all the municipalities to adopt their ward plans. Myself and the people in my group are offering as much assistance as the local governments desire to help them meet that requirement. So we're not leaving them on an island. And then October 15th through November 20th, you will have to have another public hearing that requires another Class 3 notice before you adopt your final supervisory districts. Those municipalities that have aldermanic districts, they have a Class 2 notice to adopt their aldermanic districts. And if we can stay on this schedule, we'll have 21 districts come election next spring. So that's what I have. So how did we get the 3 maps that you're seeing on the wall? The first thing is that the 3 people in the GIS division, myself, Mike, and Pat, we discussed the guidance that we received from the Structure Advisory Committee last year. And we were given 5 criteria to use as we created plans: equal population, compact districts, follow municipal lines as much as possible, be cognizant of city, village, and town representation, and try to minimize ballot styles to the extent possible. Using these criteria, each of the 3 GIS staff independently created a plan. The existing plan was not used as a starting point, and I will tell you a couple of reasons as to why that was the case. The target population for the existing plan was just over 5,000 people. The target population for a 21 district plan is 6,512. So to start with an existing district, right off the bat, you're going to have to pull 1,500 people out of a neighboring district and put it in. Well, that neighboring district has no semblance of what it looked like anymore because you already took 1,500 people out of it. In addition to that, the 2015 plan, when you adopted it, had a 21% deviation. Now it had a 21% deviation. Remember the 10% is the standard we normally go off of. The 21% deviation because when we do redistricting between censuses, we can't go back to the census block anymore. We have to use the wards that are already in place and adopted by the municipalities. Some of those wards in West Bend and Hartford and Germantown and in Richfield could have 2,000 people in them. You're moving those 2,000 people are either in this district or they're in that district. You can't fine tune those districts nearly like you can with the opportunity that you have with the census. So because of that, a lot of the districts, they were created to create the population as close as we could, but it did chop up the municipality. Like some of the districts look great, but there are other municipalities that get chopped up a little bit more than what we normally would like. So as directed and as Don pointed out at the introduction, incumbents were not factored or even mapped at this stage of the process. Districts were mapped based on what we felt made the most sense geographically. And only after the plans were created did we look to see which supervisors were in that district. So how do you start creating a plan? Lots of different ways. Sometimes you just pick a part in a county. You're going to start in the northeast corner or the southwest corner or whatever the case is, and you're cognizant of all the goals, and you just start assigning blocks, keeping in mind all of the requirements that were given to us, and you see where you end up. Sometimes you look at the population of municipalities or groups of municipalities, and you compare that to your target population, and you see where those mesh together nicely, because that sometimes makes sense of where to start. Sometimes you pick one of the priorities and you try to maximize that one priority at the expense of some of the others. Likely it's a combination of all of those. So as you're assigning blocks, how do you decide where to put that block? Sometimes you follow a municipal boundary. Sometimes you follow a natural major highway or a landmark. Highway 60 in Hartford being a good example, Highway 33 in West Bend. It's easy to tell somebody I represent area north of 60, it's south of 33, that sort of thing. You need to be aware of the municipal geometry. I live on the west side of the city of West Bend. There's over 1,000 people who live in that area, and there's very few connections to the rest of the city of West Bend. So those people kind of all, even though it's multiple census blocks, they all have to go or not go together. And if you leave them isolated, it's hard to add them to another city district. You need to be aware of block populations. If you need 200 people to fill out the rest of that district, and one of the blocks is 600 and another of the blocks is 100 or 200 or something like that, you're not going to pick that block that's 600 because that's going to put you over. And then you can't paint yourself into a corner. You can't leave isolated blocks someplace else and have them completely surrounded by another district because you can't get back there to put them in a district. So that's what we did. Each of the three of us in the division, and I'll try not to use the first person here because it's not important who created each plan, but we independently created a plan using all those criteria and processes. We then printed out those three plans, and we took a step back, and collectively we critiqued those plans. We identified the areas that we thought were good, and we identified the areas that we thought could be improved. After that, the staff member took their plan and fine-tuned it. We printed them off. And then, and only then, did we map the incumbents and place them on the map. So the packet that went out earlier this week, what do you have? You have a small map of the district. You have a sheet that shows the population of that district, how it compares to the target, what the percent difference is, as well as the overall deviation of the plan. Remember that less than 10% is generally considered to meet the one person, one vote standard. Washington County's minority population is growing. We looked at it, and I can tell you that we were unable to find any way to create a majority district, at least in this decennial census. So that's why you only see the total population on that report. You also have two reports that kind of look like this one. The first one is If you look at a district, you can see how it's broken down by municipality. If you see a number there that is less than the minimum ward size, either that municipality is going to be forced to create a substandard ward, or if it's a 0 population or something like 2, it probably means, and we can talk about specific cases if you want. It probably means that there is going to be an island of one municipality completely surrounded by the other one. And we decided to make the supervisory district contiguous rather than making a non-contiguous ward and supervisory district to accommodate that municipal island. And then the other part of that report is if you want to look and see how a municipality is broke up, you can look up the municipality and see what districts make up that municipality. So I can talk briefly about each individual plan. I'm trusting that you have the plans in front of you and I don't need to show them at the screen at this point, although I can as we talk more in depth later. But draft 1, no single priority was used to draft the map. The map drafter started in the north part of the county and worked their way south. And there's a reason why the districts in the north part of the county are a little bit more squared off and look pretty, because the first district you draw is always the best. So pros and cons of the map. City of West Bend has 3 whole districts, a majority of 2 districts and a minority in 1 district. So they're split up a little bit. District 16 combines Slinger with small parts of Polk and the town of Hartford. District 15 combines most of Polk with significant part of the town of Hartford, as well as a small part of the city of Hartford. So that's a mixed district. District 12 is all of Erin, along with parts of the city of Hartford and the town of Hartford. If you haven't caught in the theme, Hartford's getting chopped up a little bit on this one. Village of Jackson is assured a supervisor. So this is going to be an interesting one because it's treated different ways in different plans. The Village of Jackson has lost the population. 7,185, but currently there's no county board supervisor living in the Village of Jackson. So if the intent of the executive committee is to ensure that the Village of Jackson has a supervisor moving forward, what would logically make sense is to have 1 district that is completely the Village of Jackson. By doing that, you are assuring yourself that you're going to have a district with no incumbent, just because nobody in Jackson is currently on the board. Newburg is with Farmington, not Trenton. Villages of Richfield and Germantown, along with the town of Germantown, combined to create exactly 5 districts without any spillover. This plan would require the creation of a couple substandard wards in addition to that island ward scenario that I was describing earlier. So that is draft 1. Draft 2 was created with population deviation being of highest priority. So this plan has the best plan deviation. Some comments about that plan. District 3 includes Addison, town of Hartford, city of Hartford, and part of the town of Erin. So that's kind of a large district. City of West Bend, again, 3 districts, the majority and 2 others, and the minority in a 6th district. The Village of Jackson is split. So it's possible you'll continue to have no representation from the Village of Jackson. The Village of Slinger is also split. District 15 includes Trenton and parts of the town of Jackson, the Village of Jackson, and Germantown. Village of Kewaskum is connected to Wayne through a narrow strip. That narrow strip would require the town of Jackson. I'm sorry, not Jackson, Kewaskum. Let me try that again. Village of Kewaskum is connected to Wayne through a narrow strip. That would require the town of Kewaskum to create a substandard ward. Newburg is again with Farmington, not Trenton. It's going to require a couple substandard wards. And also this plan would require significantly more ballot styles than either of the other 2. Draft 3. Draft 3 was created with the understanding that we could sacrifice just a little bit on population deviation, because doing so allowed us to do a better job of not following municipal lines. So this plan has the worst deviation, but it is still well within that 10% threshold. Now the city of West Bend is exactly 5 districts with no spillover into or from the neighboring towns. The town of Hartford, together with the city of Hartford, together with the town of Hartford, create exactly 3 districts. So you have 2 districts that are 100% city, and then you have the rest of the city going with the town of Hartford with no spillover. Village of Richfield gets 1 whole district and the minority and 3 others. District 14 is probably the worst district in this plan, as it includes parts of the town of West Bend, town of Polk, and part of the village of Richfield. Barton and Farmington are kept whole and together make up exactly 1 district. Village of Jackson is assured a supervisor. And District 21, I point out only because it has 4 municipalities: Town of Jackson, Village of Jackson, Town of Germantown, and Village of Germantown. If you look at some of the historic maps, you can see that that's not unprecedented, but sometimes that's a concern. And if my preliminary analysis was correct, this plan would only require substandard wards in the case of town islands. So that's one other thing going forward too. That is what I have prepared. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions from executive? Hearing none.
Yes, I guess maybe I'm getting too old or whatever, but I'm not remembering ever voting on or how we came about with 21 districts. In other words, with the 6,500 people in a district. I don't remember that coming in front of the board or anything like that. So I guess I need that question answered. And then the second one is, if the board doesn't vote for any one of these 3 maps, does that mean that we stay the same? And my last question is, why does this have to be rushed through before the end of the year here when we have time later to redo districts and everything else, when we can take the time and really look at it? I don't disagree with some of the maps that are up there or parts of them, but I do disagree with parts of every one. And I don't think we're going to get that happy anyways. But getting down, you know, from our current down to 21, I don't remember ever voting on that.
Okay, again, we'll pull that up. Well, let me answer your last question first. The reason we're in this predicament that we're in to get it condensed is there was legislation that was brought before the governor that would have extended the timeline, and this wouldn't have taken effect until 2024. He vetoed that. So we're stuck with the timeline we have, even though the statute sets out exactly how we're going to do it. We didn't get it almost until almost one of the last deadlines before we got the information. I'll turn it over to.
Okay, so.
Okay. Erica, what was that? Huh? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think. Okay.
So it's 2019 Resolution 58 regarding the Washington County Board of Supervisors board size. And it reduces the amount of districts from 26 to 21. And it was voted on February 12th of 2020.
Okay, did we answer everything? Huh? Okay, all right. Yeah, that's.
Referring to map 3, I guess my question is, does this map allow the municipalities a little bit easier setup on their wards? And is this the most efficient of the 3 maps toward getting us complete in time for the deadlines? In your opinion?
In my opinion, yes, with Plan 1 being a close second. I think that, like I said, if my analysis was right, we did not create any situations where they would need to create substandard wards. For those municipalities that have to create wards with a minimum size of 300, we've left them 300 people. For those that have a minimum ward size of 600, we've left them 600 people. Also, for the city of West Bend, who has to create 8 older person districts and then put their wards on top, the fewer lines we put through, the easier, in theory, their job will be. So by not splitting up West Bend, by splitting up minimally the city of Hartford, and they should have an easier job. Germantown does get split up a little bit, but I'm not sure that it's any worse in Plan 3 than it is in either of the other 2 options.
Just in regards to the actual ballot styles, which was one of the goals directed to the GIS division when coming up with these maps. I had Eric run reports, and they're rough reports, but I can tell you that currently, April 7th of 2020, we had 95 ballot styles across the county. These reduce the ballot styles. Draft 1 roughly is, without knowing what the wards will be determined for the municipalities, draft 1 is a total of 90 ballot styles. Draft 2 is 117. Draft 3 is 88. And so those are rough estimates because the municipalities still have to determine their wards and how those will break out specifically in West Bend, Hartford, and Germantown. But like I said, currently we have 95. And so just take that into consideration as well, because those are 95 ballots that I'm reviewing over and over and over to verify that everything is accurately listed, candidate wise, race wise, at the county level and on down municipal and school.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of that one meeting of the ad hoc committee, yes, we did say we wanted to take out what's sitting here now and make it as straightforward and easy on the municipalities as possible. And I think they've done a good job of that in a couple of these maps. I don't like number 2. It's for Jackson, it's so ungainly. I mean, Ward District 15 is all over the place. So, and it's not the best one here. So it was interesting to hear the wards that you just said being down to 88 ballot styles on number 3, because that does seem the most, though it has the largest deviation, 463 top to bottom, it does look the best as far as keeping things compact. So I appreciate your efforts on this very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to skip you, Supervisor Sorcy, and go to executive first. Supervisor Bossert. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It looks to me, now you're cutting out 5 districts, right? Okay. So it looks to me like you can have war where you have people running against each other. Is that what it looks like? Well, that's real stupid.
There are some districts that will have 0 incumbents, and there will some districts that could have as many as 3, and some districts that have 1, and some districts that have 2. But that was, again, that was not taking into account where you live, and I say you collectively.
Well, they did this a long time ago. They ran Phil Lobenheimer against Bob Hardwick. What? What's unpolitical about it? The fact is they're stacking people up against people. Doesn't, yeah,
Well,
you're in another world anyways.
Supervisor.
Well, forget it.
Supervisor
That's to
Sorcy.
me what it looks like.
No, after the districts were drawn. Let me be perfectly clear about that. The lines were put on the paper first, and then we mapped your addresses. There was no outside. There was no influence from the county board chair, the executive, or any of the supervisors in the room. It was, nobody was looking at who has to run against who when the lines were put on the paper.
I made it perfectly clear to GIS that when they did these maps, they were not to consider current supervisors at all. They were to conduct and to produce these maps that best serves the citizens that we serve. So that's why they came up with this. And I echo what Supervisor Bishop says, that when I looked at the three maps, when I look at three, I see what the Structured Advisory Committee asked for that to happen. Mr. Supervisor, were you on that committee? Were you on the advisory? It was, yeah, you were on the 2015 one, right? Okay. So I wanted politics completely out of the way. I know other chairmen have gotten involved with the redistricting process, and I want to protect this person. I want to do this. I want no part of that. I want it to chips fall where they may. And then we'll go on from there. Get down to the 21 and we move forward. So Supervisor.
Okay, so I took the time to go through and list how many townships, how many cities, how many villages were remained intact, and how many were split into various different districts. Came out exactly what you said. District, and I didn't look at the maps. It came to the point where you just can't figure out what you're doing if you look at where the lines are drawn. I didn't even look at them. But Plan 1 has 12 townships and villages and remaining fully intact, and Plan 3 has 11. And now that I hear how you did Plan 2, trying to keep the deviation as close as possible, I can see why it came out that way. There were only 6 that remained intact, and I think the 6 were like real small townships. So I think you did a really good job. And, you know, even to the point that you said that the city of Hartford and the town of Hartford kind of remained together in 3, which I think is a pretty good goal, because those people, I mean, those districts aren't going to change very much in the next 10 years, maybe the city of Hartford. And I looked at that too, as thinking, okay, where is their growth going to be? And really Plan 1 and Plan 3, either one is really good. The only comment I might make is that by keeping 5 full districts in West Bend, that gives them almost 25% of the voting power on the board. And I don't know if that people want to consider that, but I know that townships were concerned that they would lose power when we redistrict. So that's the only comment. And I didn't think that when I looked at Plan 1 and Plan 3, they may have 5 full districts, but they still end up close to 5 districts in Plan 1 too. So I think you did a really good job, and
Thank you.
holy cow, you said exactly what I came up with. Thank you.
Thanks.
Supervisor Conrath.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that the districting has to be done per state statute by population. You can only have so much variance in population, thus you have to split up, say, the city of Hartford, or split up Slinger. And I just want some clarification, because I don't know, in my mind, I'm thinking, say, Slinger in the town of Polk, and maybe part of thinking more, the boundaries of, keeping the boundaries intact of towns and villages and maybe school systems a little bit, versus all this dividing up. But could you just explain the state statute again, just a couple highlights of this process?
Yeah, sure. So yes, districts need to be substantially equal in population. So when you tell me we need 21 districts, I then take the county's total population of 136,000 and change, divide it by 21 to come up with what our target district size is, which is 6,512. So, yeah, I mean, breaking up the municipalities isn't always ideal, but when you have, lost my numbers here. When you have a village of Slinger with 5,992 people, like you can't leave it at that, or you're gonna have too much deviation in your plan. So you need to find roughly 500 people from someplace to put into that, to put into that rest of that district. Town of Polk has 3,988. So it's over half a district, but it's not anywhere near that 6512 that we need to make a whole district.
Okay, and that's per state statute,
That's-
that number.
That's the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment.
Okay, yeah, so then the smaller townships do lose their voice. It won't be as strong because technically, because there are less people. And that's the rationale?
Well,
No.
no, not necessarily. Everybody has fewer representatives. City of West Bend used to have 8. And then they went down to 6. And now they're down to 5 because we keep making the districts bigger. So in a case like the city of West Bend, City of Hartford has 3 right now. They're going down to 2 and apart. So all the districts get more people. All the municipalities lose their own unique voice, but each of the districts still have substantially equal population. Each supervisor is still representing the same number. So what you have to do in the rural areas where the population is less dense is maybe you have to combine Wayne with Addison. Maybe you need to combine Farmington with Barton in order to make that district whole.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Bossert.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank you for all the hard work you've done on this. I know this is a big project and a lot of short notice. Going back a couple of years ago, I know there were a lot of supervisors, myself included, who promised that we were going to reduce the board. So I'm very glad we're doing that, and this is the final step of that. Going back to the last meeting of the Structure Advisory Committee, I know one thing that was of concern is under the current maps, the village of Jackson is split in half, and we didn't want to see that continue. And we also wanted to make sure the towns remain represented. So on the issue of representing the towns, I actually went through each map and tried to figure out if a district was a town district or a village district or a city district or split. And it looks like maps 1 and 3 seem to keep 6 town districts, which when I calculated out the population, it looked like with 21, the cities should have 7 districts, the villages should have 8, and the town should have 6. And then it looked like map 2 only had 4 town districts. So that was kind of a concern. Map 2 is also the one that splits Jackson and also splits Slinger. Initially when I looked at these maps, I didn't quite understand them. I was kind of feeling really lukewarm about them, kind of so. As I researched and reviewed them and then hearing the explanation today, I've warmed up to 1 a bit, but I've really warmed up to Plan 3. I think it really makes logical sense. So at some point we need to make a motion, I'm guessing. So I'm going to make the motion that we look at Plan 3 as the one we adopt. And hopefully somebody will second that.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me speak again. I just want to remind all the supervisors that the maps that we decide on today, or when it comes to the board, these are going to last us 10 years before we touch them again, ideally. How many of you think you're still going to be running for the board 8 years from now? We have to look at this beyond the political. And that's why, again, when we first met, we said, there's no sacred cows here. We need to do this fairly for the municipalities. This isn't about current supervisors. They're not all going to be here. That's not what this mapping is about. So again, thank you so much for following that through, and you have done a very good job. I like number 3 also, by the way. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I want to, actually, before we do a vote on this, I want to commend GIS department for really doing almost it's not impossible because you guys did it, but when I looked at it, it looked impossible to me to try to meet all that criteria that we gave them to do. So I'm very pleased with it. And thanks for all your work.
You're welcome. I'm thankful this is not my first year doing it. It would have been a lot. It'd have been a lot more intimidating if I was coming into this green.
Okay, back to the motion second. Didn't do anything? Okay.
If anybody's talking, Don, I can't hear them.
Yeah, it's kind of just a sidebar right now.
Okay, yep, it'll be in exhibit.
Okay. It just figuring out what the final resolution is going to actually look like when it goes to the board, what exhibit.
That's fine.
It's gonna, whatever. All right, we have a motion and second on the floor for plan number 3. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, it is number 3. Thank you, everybody. Our next meeting dates. What? Our next meeting dates are Wednesday, September 8th, 5:15 PM. Wednesday, September 15th at 4 PM. That's a joint meeting with Land Use and Planning Committee. And Wednesday, September 15th, 2021 at 4:30 PM. We are hereby adjourned. Thank you. But, hold on.
Unadjourned.
I thought that's, oh, I'm sorry. We okay. All right, we have the resolution. We are required. Yeah, it's. Let's clarify that we are voting on that tentative county supervisory district plan 2020 resolution, 2021 resolution. Do we have a number on that? Not yet until it goes to the board. So including supervisory draft 3 as exhibit A. So we have that appropriate, right? So again, we have the motion in second. Can we hold those? Yeah, if anybody has an issue with that, and the vote will stand for that. Anybody has any questions or concerns? Sorry about that. All right. So the resolution, 2020 resolution, the tentative county supervisor district plan is forwarded, approved and forwarded to the full county board with plan draft 3 as exhibit A. Is hereby adopted by this board. So, okay. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. I'll give you a call.
Take it back there.